Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery, and what we've got out here on the bench are my 334-day-old African nightcrawler yellow buckets. And for some time now we've been trying to get these systems ready for harvest. First we started running a fan down into the buckets to try to dry the material, and we eventually, a couple check-ins ago, decided that that was already sort of at the point where we're content with the moisture level. So we turned off the fan, and there's still a little piece of paper cover on here to prevent further drying, because I think the material's almost there. Still a little bit clumpy, but almost there. And I guess the only thing at this point preventing me from proceeding with the harvest of these systems, which I think is going to be done by me sort of screening the material and then taking any sort of stuff that gets caught in the screen, as well as the worms, to launch off a new system. And then taking the screened material, which will probably still have a bunch of worms in it, baiting that to make sure we round up the stragglers. So I figured, maybe I would try that today, but I decided, let's just give them one more feeding. And I think the next check-in might be the day that we finally get around to harvesting these systems and relocating the wormies, but for today it's just a feeding. And I mean, long story short, in terms of my reason for not proceeding with the harvest of the castings and the relocation of the worms today, is that I'm a little bit tight on time, so I need to be somewhere in a couple hours. I figured I would just come in here and give them a quick feeding. So number one prep for harvest has been the drying aspect, and number two has been the style of feedings. And the style of feedings for a number of feedings now has been small particle size foods, such as the coffee that they're getting today. Last time we gave them worm chow. So all stuff that's intended to leave behind virtually no leftovers. And even if there are leftovers of today's feeding, the coffee, we'll never know it, because the stuff will just blend into the material that that the wormies inhabit. Every time I come in here, I feel compelled to try to break apart the little clumps, despite the fact that we are probably going to screen the material and just grab whatever does remain clumpy and gets caught in the screen, and just take that with the worms to their new home. And that segues neatly into the other reason I didn't really feel like I was ready to do this today, was because I really didn't have their home prepared. That kept becoming this thorn in my side and sort of a preventing variable, preventing me from wanting to proceed with finalizing these systems and relocating the worms. But what I did before getting these buckets up onto the bench here to prepare today's video and to give them their feeding was to actually prepare their new home. So a moment ago you might have saw in the background a tub on the top shelf of the shelf that's behind me over here, and that was the bin that I just prepared for them, prepared with some food and grit and some nice moistened bedding that's going to sit there and sort of prime, because I do like the home for the worms to not be sort of a sterile, freshly built system. I like for the material to sort of prime and become a little bit broken in before the introduction of the worms. So I think slowly but surely I'm sort of eliminating any of the barriers that'll continue to give me a excuse not to proceed. Wow, look at this. Once upon a time I remember feeding tea bags to the worms, and every now and then I do still bump into the remnant of a tea bag. If I'm not mistaken, that's exactly what we see here. I think for a while there I was fishing them out, because I did come to the realization that they're just not breaking down in the worm bins. But here we actually have a very, very, very old tea bag, which I'm sort of taking a little bit of extra time here to make sure I don't extract with a little wormy that would eventually become collateral damage as a result of this being removed now. So that's interesting. I don't even know how long it's been since these worms were given tea bags, but it was a really, really long time ago. So I think we're just going to kind of proceed at this point with giving them their portion of coffee. and then we could let them get back to work for a little while longer. I'm not sure when we're gonna get back to tending to the harvest of the castings in these systems and the relocation of the worms, but I believe that between the drying of the material, which was one of the prerequisites, as well as the preparation of their new home, which was another of my prerequisites, I'm gradually breaking down the barriers that would prevent us from proceeding to that next and final stage of the life cycle of these systems. So on to bucket number 2, give them their feeding, and then we'll be pretty much done here. So I guess we'll do what I've been doing lately, which is to treat the handling of anything that comes after the first system as sort of cookie cutter, with the assumption that we're not in for any surprises and just more of the same as what we saw in the previous system. And I guess that's pretty much what we're seeing here. I guess I'm just going to make a similar observation to what I did during the last check-in, which was, I believe, 12 days ago at this point, was just the fact that the material in this system seems a little bit less clumpy and a lot more flowing and free-flowing and granular, which is kind of nice. I guess when it comes time to screen this material, very little of it will remain in the screen and go with the worms to their new home. I do believe that a good bit of the stuff that's over in bucket number 1 will actually end up getting caught in the screen, even though this stuff does seem to flow a little bit better than what's in bucket number 1. I'm still encountering little clumps that I feel compelled to break apart, as long as they're right there in my hand already anyhow. But I don't think we have much more to do here other than drop in their coffee portion for the day and call it a day. So here we go. Nice generous portion of coffee for each of these systems. Kind of tricky to see exactly where the coffee is because it's pretty much identical for the most part to the surrounding materials, but I did attempt to submerge it deep enough so that as the material out here on the surface of the system dries a little bit, it won't put the worms off from approaching the food that I just gave them and consuming it. So, man, is it hot and is it humid. I did set up the fan to blow on me as I'm working here, just so I can tolerate the heat and the humidity, and it is pretty tolerable, but until I turned the fan on, it was quite nasty. So that's it for our check-in now with the now 334-day African nightcrawler systems. Feeding number 27 going in here in bucket number 2, and it was feeding number 31 going into bucket number 1. And I do believe that it's quite likely that this will be the final feeding of these systems. Next time we check in, it's quite likely we'll be harvesting their castings and relocating them into their new home. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.